Hey everyone, I thought I'd make a quick video to talk about my favorite games that I played in 2022. Now this will be a little different than most Game of the Year lists because these games weren't necessarily released in 2022, they're just ones that I happened to play this year. I'm mainly focusing on why I enjoyed these 10 games, so these aren't in-depth reviews. This will be a spoiler-free video, but I am going to show some gameplay and trailer footage, so beware. On to the list. Number 10. Crosscode. We've all played games with mute protagonists, right? There's a ton of examples from famous games like Chrono Trigger and Half-Life. Well, Crosscode puts you in control of Leia, an avatar in a massively multiplayer online game called Crossworlds, and she's mute, but there's a twist. Her voice control module seems to be broken, and she must try to communicate with her friends in order to play Crossworlds and move towards a greater goal. It's a remarkably well-done action RPG that somehow manages to carve out a new niche with large, Zelda-style dungeons that revolve around geometric puzzles and top-down platforming. The mileage that the developers squeeze out of these two gameplay concepts is actually astounding. I spent so much time just kind of exploring the vast overworld spaces and figuring out how to jump to a chest that honestly probably contained something that I didn't care about. It became very meditative to play, and I wasn't expecting that at all. The story is nice, and I liked a few of the characters, but the cleverness of its design is where it really shines. Number 9. The Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. I'm a big fan of the Ace Attorney series, and this ended up being a really fun pair of entries. It felt like the developers had a reference for the period that this game depicts, which made it all very charming. I'm glad they packaged both of the great Ace Attorney games together, because playing one and not the other wouldn't have had the same impact. Out of the two games, the sequel wrapped up most of the hanging plot threads, and I felt that its characters and their personalities were better communicated through their wonderful animations, so that was my favorite of the two. Also, the final case was superb, so it definitely meets the standards set by the previous games. Number 8. Metroid Dread. Looking back, I actually haven't played much of the Metroid series beyond the first 3 games, but I'd still say that I thoroughly enjoy the ones that I have played. They have such great atmosphere, and they are some of the most replayable games I can think of. Metroid Dread lives up to the earlier entries in this regard. Moving around as Samus in this game felt incredible, it was just so fluid. There were so many times I'd look at the map and say, ugh, I don't want to walk all the way over there. And then I'd use some of the mobility upgrades I had acquired, and then all of a sudden I found myself at my destination in record time. The enemy sections were tense and exciting thanks to the amazingly smooth controls. I had a lot of fun ducking, dodging, and trying to outsmart them. The combat was solid, and the bosses were a great challenge. Number 7. Super Zix. At the beginning of the year, I decided to play more vertical shmups. I'd been shmup curious for a while, so I picked out a few to try, including a game called Super Zix. Somehow I found Super Zix on Steam without knowing anything about the developer's previous work, or even the games that inspired it. And now I have to try and explain why I enjoyed it so much. I'm told that it's similar to Toaplan shmups, which means that it's not quite a bullet hell game, but it is very fast-paced and intense. It has multiple playable characters to choose from, each with their own strengths and weaknesses, as well as a few unlockable ones. You can give yourself multiple credits, which was great for me as a total newbie. It also has some weirdness and a sense of humor that I liked. I just loved the game's overall style and challenge. I don't know if shmup experts consider this one to be easy or hard, but it was perfect for me. Number 6. Bayonetta. I played through this for the first time a few months ago, which was before Bayonetta 3 came out, and even before that other thing happened. I didn't have too much experience with character action games at the time, but I had a blast playing this. The cutscenes were hysterical works of art that never stopped getting more ridiculous, except when they needed to explain something. Each character had their role to play in the story, and it was very engaging to see their interactions. But of course, the star of this game is the way that the player becomes a choreographer of combat, turning the game into a true spectacle fighter with bayoneted dancing, pirouetting, and slaying hordes of enemies. The move where she spins around on the floor and shoots enemies with her feet guns might be the most incredible thing I've ever seen. Great game, and I'm looking forward to checking out the rest of the series.
Number 5, Alicia Dragoon.
I finally got around to playing through this for the first time on my Genesis Mini. It's an action platformer, which were a dime a dozen back when it was released, but somehow it feels so fresh. The main character has an awesome design, and she attacks with lightning that charges its strength when you aren't using it. You can also call upon a dragon friend to help in battle, and you have a handful of them to choose from. Your dragons have their own health bars and levels, so it helps to consider what you're up against, and whether you should preserve your dragon's strength for an upcoming fight. It has in-game demo sequences, or cutscenes, that are skippable, which felt like it was ahead of its time. It has secrets galore, enough variety in the stages to keep things interesting, plenty of challenge, and it can be completed in a very reasonable amount of time. This is now an all-time classic for me, definitely one of my favorite Genesis games.
Number 4, The House in Fata Morgana, Dreams of the Revenants Edition.
I had heard really good things about this game from others, so I was very curious about it. I didn't know anything about it going in, and I wasn't prepared in the slightest for the places that this story goes. The atmosphere is creepy and disturbing, and it doesn't let up in unsettling you until you truly believe that the satisfying end you've been hoping for will never come. It's an emotional roller coaster, as they say, but it's absolutely worth checking out if you think you're prepared for the ride.
Number 3, Dead Estate.
This game appeared in my Steam Discovery queue, which I hardly ever make use of, but I was thrilled to find something that I was actually interested in that I'd never heard of. It's a goofy, horror-themed, pixel art, isometric roguelite twin-stick shooter, and it's got a certain something that about 98% of the Steam reviews mention that makes it stand out. I love roguelites and twin-stick shooters, and this one had a really fun style that kept me playing.
Number 2, Nier Replicant, version 1.22474487139.
I played and loved the first Nier, the Gestalt version on PS3, a couple years ago, and I bought this one on a whim. The key difference between the two versions is that they have a different protagonist, but it recontextualizes everything. Both games revolve around a young girl named Yona, and while you played as her single father in Gestalt, this version puts you in control of Yona's brother. I thought I'd prefer Dad Nier, but Bro Nier worked about as well, and I still really enjoyed my time with it. I went in without knowing anything about the new content, so that whole section was a great surprise. It's a wonderful thing to experience if you like the original Nier.
Number 1, The Somnium Files, Nirvana Initiative.
A sequel to one of my favorite games, by one of my favorite directors, starring one of my favorite characters from said game? No thanks. For real though, I loved it. It feels like not just a worthy successor, but a refinement of what made the first game so enjoyable. The gameplay in the Somnium sequences was much more fun this time around, and it felt like there was more of a logical thread to follow compared to the first game. The characters were still great, and the climax was incredible. It also has my favorite Easter egg that I've ever seen in a game. The best thing about it though is that there were some really satisfying puzzles to solve throughout the game. On a few of them, I entered an incorrect answer, and was forced to go back and rethink my solution. At this point I winced, as I was expecting one of the characters to outright tell me the correct answer, but the game didn't hold my hand or offer any unwanted advice. And when I finally figured it out, I was thrilled because I became the detective. I think there may have been a difficulty setting that changes whether or not you get hints, but I'm very glad that I got the exact experience I wanted with this game. So that's my top 10 for 2022. This video was partially made possible by a journal I've been keeping for the past few years where I write down the games that I finish and any thoughts about my experience. It's a really fun way to keep track of my gaming journey, and I'd recommend it to anyone that finds themselves in a rut. Anyway, thanks for watching and have a happy new year.